and now she's calling me selfish and cut contact. I, 24F, recently inherited a house from my late uncle. My uncle was an eccentric man and a wealthy one at that, so he could afford whatever he wanted, and this 2-story house with a swimming pool in the front yard was one of those things. He was a bachelor till he passed away at 60 a few months ago, so he really didn't need this big house, but he bought it nevertheless. And it turned out to be a blessing for me because my uncle left all his money and property to his favorite family members, and I happened to be one of them. So I inherited $75,000 in this house while a few others split the rest of the money and whatever other assets he had. I moved in here 2 weeks ago and haven't completely finished unpacking yet, but I already love this place. My parents know that I've moved into my uncle's place, and I even invited them to check my new house the day after I moved in. My mother brought her stepdaughter, 16F, along with her, which was a little weird because I'd asked only her to visit, but I didn't mind since it's not like I hated that kid. I didn't particularly like her because her behavior around me was really closed off and curt, even though I'd been nothing but nice to her. My parents are divorced and have been for the last 20 years. They separated when I was 4, and my parents continued to remain on good terms as they co-parented me growing up. They didn't have a messy divorce, and as far as I know, they separated because they realized they were incompatible but stayed good friends. So I had a good relationship with both my parents growing up, but my mother remarried a couple of years ago and she's been distant ever since. She'd been dating her now husband for 2 years, and I'd met him several times and we'd been civil, so I didn't really expect my mother to suddenly distance herself from us after her wedding. But I tried not to feel too bad about it because she had a new family now and would obviously want to devote more of her time to them now that I was a grown-up and could deal with my life on my own. My dad remained single, and as a result, he's the one I've been spending more past couple of years. So now, I'd say that I'm a lot closer to him than I am to my mother, but this house was an important milestone that I wanted to celebrate with both my parents present. My mother's behavior was really awkward and nothing like the past because she, just like her daughter, was putting on the same curt behavior as if we were all meeting for the first time. She wasn't as relaxed as she used to be, but I couldn't address it without making things even weirder, so I just had to deal with it. In the past couple of years, I'd only been able to meet my mother a handful of times. Mostly on the holidays. And she still did seem relaxed and fun to be around, even though we were meeting after a really long, but this time, it just wasn't the same, and I suspected that it must have been because of her stepdaughter's presence. I wasn't sure of it, though, so I didn't bring it up later with her either. My dad had only good things to say about the house and said that it was perfect for me, and my mom agreed. I was pleased that they liked it and even said that I'd like to host Christmas at my house this year. My dad was really happy, but my mom and her stepdaughter just pursed their lips and sat there silently. So I could tell that something really weird was going on with my mom even then, and I should have probably foreseen what was to come. About a week ago, I was asked by my company to attend a meeting a little out of town. The location of the meeting was a 7-hour drive away from the city, and I was skeptical to leave, but my boss was insistent that they wanted nobody else but me to deal with this client. So I agreed eventually, since they offered to let me stay at the hotel the meeting would be held for the weekend, so I was getting a free vacation out of this short business trip as well. The only reason I'd been skeptical to go on this trip was because I had a really important package, a rare collector's edition game, arriving on the day I was supposed to leave, and someone needed to be there at my house to receive it or else it'd go back, and I couldn't let that happen since I'd had to wait for ages for it to be delivered already. If it went back, I might have had to wait for a really long time again. My boyfriend and I are going to be celebrating our 3rd anniversary in 2 weeks, and I needed his gift to be ready, so it was very important for me to receive the package on time. My first thought was to ask my dad to be there at my house to take it instead, but unfortunately, he'd be out of town for the weekend as well and would only return 6 days later since he's taking a trip to the beach with his friends. I couldn't ask my boyfriend because it was his gift and I wanted it to be a surprise. I'd asked a couple of my friends, but the timing wasn't working out for any of them. I was on the verge of giving up and was going to ask my neighbors to watch out for the delivery, which would be kind of awkward because my neighbors were mostly unfriendly and cold middle-aged corporate professionals who already didn't like me much because I didn't exactly fit into this neighborhood. I was too young, is what my dad explained to me when I asked him why they were all so weird towards me. With no other options left, it appeared that I would have to go to them for help anyway and have to deal with the awkwardness. I didn't want to ask my mother either because I already knew that she'd say no and make up some excuse, and frankly, after the last meeting that we had, I didn't want to ask her either. It had been weird enough and I really didn't want to bother her, but surprisingly, she's the one who chose to call me instead. My mother and I used to talk on the phone a lot before she got married again, but after that, she'd pretty much stopped calling me unless she had a reason to. So I waited for her to get to the point, and eventually, she asked me if I'd be willing to vacate the house this weekend and let her use it for her book club meeting for just one day. She promised me that she'd even pay for wherever I needed to go that day, but she just wanted the keys for one day since she was supposed to host this weekend, but her husband was going to be home on the day that they were supposed to meet. Coincidentally, it was the day that my boyfriend's gift was supposed to arrive and I was supposed to go on the trip, so I immediately said yes. It didn't seem very fishy at the time because my mother had been a part of her book club for a really long time and my house was just a little outside of her neighborhood anyway. I was just thrilled that I could go on this trip without worrying about the package and agreed to let her stay at my house for the weekend, and I wouldn't have to vacate the house as such either because I'd be out anyway. So it worked out well for both of us, and 2 days ago, I finally handed over the keys to my mother at around 1 in the afternoon and started on my journey. The client was a weirdo and had scheduled the meeting at 9, so it didn't make sense to leave early. It was a 7-hour drive and I was fully prepared to unwind on the drive and also utilize the spa at the hotel the next day, but around the 5th hour of my drive, my boss reached out to me to inform me that the client had canceled since he'd had a terrible allergic reaction to something he'd eaten a few hours ago and was currently in the hospital. I was obviously really annoyed, but there was nothing much that I could do at that point, so I decided to stop at a restaurant for some food and to contemplate what to do next. The company wanted me to go back home because obviously they didn't want me to stay at the hotel on their money since the client had rescheduled the meeting for the next weekend. While eating, I decided to check what was going on at my house and test the new CCTV cameras that I'd installed in every room. I could access them from wherever I wanted to, and I had them installed just a few days back, so I wanted to check how well they were working now. To my surprise, I saw that instead of just a couple of women in their late 50s sitting and discussing books in the living room, my house was jam-packed with a bunch of kids. Teenagers, to be more exact. And not just in the living room, but every damn room was overflowing with teens. I didn't count, but I was sure that my house was overrun with at least 100 kids. I was dumbstruck and had no idea what was happening, so I decided to rush right back to check out what was happening. It was around 4 in the afternoon when I found out about the party happening in my house without my consent, and I knew that my mother and her stepdaughter definitely had something to do with this. I drove back home, and by the time I reached, it was almost 11. I could hear the music from a block away, and when I finally reached, there were kids drinking beer and chilling in the yard. My stepsister had thrown a full-blown rager in my house without even asking me first, and I was pissed. As soon as I opened the door, it felt like all my senses were being attacked at once. The music was ear-splitting, and it was a miracle that nobody had called the cops yet. The house reeked of cheap beer and sweat, and I was struggling to get through the throng of teenagers all dancing or making out or just standing there vaping. It took me a while and earned me a lot of odd looks from the kids while I made my way from room to room, checking for my stepsister, but I finally found her in a secluded bedroom on the 2nd floor. She was sitting on the floor there with a couple of her friends drinking beer out of a cup and giggling like an idiot. Then I saw that she had her feet propped up on a pillow that she'd definitely taken from my bed, and I absolutely just lost it. She'd seen me standing in the doorway but had just ignored me and gone back to talking to her friends, but I wasn't about to let her ignore me like that, especially when she was in my house. So I grabbed her by the arm and lifted her to her feet and told her that she and her friends needed to clear out right away or else I'd call the cops on them. Thankfully, she wasn't too drunk and could stand on her own, so I didn't need to hold her up for much longer. That little brat had the audacity to argue with me and said that my mother had said she could have the place for the day, so I had no right to interfere or kick her out. Lucky for me, this house didn't belong to my mother, it belonged to me, and I had the paperwork to prove it as well. So I told her that she could either make herself scarce right then or I really would call the cops. And even if I didn't, one of my cranky old neighbors definitely would, thanks to their ear-splitting music. After some arguing, a few of her friends seemed to be intimidated by the idea of having the cops pay them a visit because after all, they'd all been drinking heavily, and most, if not all, of them were underage, so they could get into serious trouble for it. Within half an hour, they'd cleared out, and once they were all gone, I decided to contact the person responsible for all of this. I called my mother up and gave her an earful for taking undue advantage of my trust. I told her that I just had to kick out a bunch of teenagers from my house because her stepdaughter had decided that it was okay to throw a massive high school rager in my house in my absence without even asking me first, all thanks to her. I told her that it was unacceptable what she'd done and that she was lucky nobody called the cops. But instead of apologizing to me, she started arguing with me and told me that I'd overreacted and ruined my stepsister's birthday party. She'd wanted to throw a party for her friends for the longest time, but their own house wasn't big enough to have a party at that scale, so she'd thought that I'd be selfless for once and let my little sister have this for herself. My mother accused me of being selfish and said that I had a massive house now and could afford to let people use it for their needs because it was not like her stepdaughter had done anything wrong. Which was a load of bullcrap, because not only had they been drinking, they'd also been blasting loud music and had literally trashed my entire house. I told her that they'd narrowly escaped a slap on the wrist, and she still wasn't understanding the full weight of what she and her daughter had actually done. She herself had lied to me and said that she'd only be using the house for her book club meeting and then let her stepdaughter take over because she wanted to impress her friends by throwing a party in a house that wasn't hers. The least they could have done was at least ask for permission first, but my mother said that even if she had asked first, I most certainly would have said no because I never liked my stepsister. That's what she'd concluded from our previous visit and all the years before that. And obviously, that's not even true because, like I said before, it was my stepsister who always acted really weird and cold around me. Not the other way around. I'd try to be nice to her, but the efforts were always one-sided, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to win over an arrogant child. This argument with my mother went on for quite a while, but then I ended it by saying that now, she was the one who had to pay for or arrange the cleanup because my house had been totally trashed by her daughter and her friends, and there was no way I was cleaning up after them all by myself. It was a huge house and I didn't have the energy to do it all on my own anyway. but she refused and said that since it was my house and I'd been selfish enough to kick my stepsister out and embarrass her in front of all her schoolmates, now I could deal with the trouble of cleaning up my house on my own too. Then she hung up before I could argue and blocked me everywhere. By then, it was pretty late in the night, but I was furious at the way I was being treated, so in the heat of the moment, I decided to call her husband and told him the same thing. I then demanded that they pay for the ruckus that their daughter had caused immediately, and her husband, thankfully, was reasonable enough to cough up the money. He didn't sound too happy about it, but he did send me the money immediately, apologized for whatever my mother and his daughter had done, and said that he would speak to them and make them apologize to me as well. I told him that wasn't necessary, but he'd already disconnected the call by then. The next morning, I received a really angry call from my mother very early in the morning. Apparently, her husband had spoken to her and her stepdaughter after my phone call to him and chewed them out for what they'd done, and now, my mother was mad at me because I'd involved her husband in something that he had no idea about in the first place. He'd grounded her daughter and had told my mother that both of them needed to apologize to me, but instead of apologizing, she decided to yell at me some more. She told me that her stepdaughter was right and I really was an arrogant and narcissistic B-word. I was shocked that my own mother was calling me these things, especially when I just tried to stand up for what I believed was right. I think I might have overstepped my boundaries by calling her husband up, but apart from that, I think whatever I'd said to her and asked of her was well within reason. But what she said to me was totally out of line. It's been 2 days since our last conversation and I haven't even been able to talk to anyone about this. I can't believe my mother would say that about me, and even though we haven't been as close as we used to be for a couple of years, it still stings that she'd say such horrible things about me only to hurt me. I really don't understand where exactly I went wrong, because as far as I'm concerned, I'd been completely reasonable. I wouldn't even have called her husband if she didn't block me first. So I'd have called my mother's husband to complain to him about her and her stepdaughter's behavior after she trashed my house during a party? Update 1. Hey, guys. It's been a week since the party and I'm back here to thank everyone for the huge response. Thanks to everyone who took out the time to comment on my original post with their opinion, regardless of what they had to say. So, yeah, I didn't get back in touch with my mom and I've decided to go no contact with her because of what happened. Earlier, I used to think that it was probably because of her husband that she'd started keeping her distance from me and my dad, but I guess it's actually because of her stepdaughter. She's the one who doesn't like me one bit, and I can't imagine why, since I've tried my best to be nice to her even though she's a total arrogant and smug brat. But I can't help it, my mother's made her choice and I'm the one who has to live with it. Does it suck that she chose her stepdaughter over me? Yeah, kind of. But do I care anymore? No, I really don't. Because that incident really showed me what I needed to see and what I needed to realize about my mother, that now her topmost priority was her stepdaughter and not me. So that's the way it was, and I just have to suck it up and deal with it. It's sad because I was looking forward to hosting Christmas at my house, but my mother will never get to see that happen. I haven't yet told my dad anything about it even though he's back from vacation, but I just really don't want to talk to anyone about this right now. I just want to keep this to myself for a while, deal with it myself, and then maybe I'll bring it out in the open. This is a big deal for me and I just don't feel like anyone else knows about this. Well, you guys are an exception, because at least here I won't be bombarded with 50 questions about what happened and how I feel. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but this is the only way I can vent right now, so I'm thankful for this outlet. Update 2. Okay, so quick update. I finally told my boyfriend about what happened and he was really understanding about it. He didn't ask too many questions because he knows that annoys me, and he just comforted me silently, so that was really nice of him. But I also told my dad about what had happened a few days back and my decision to cut ties with my mother, and he told me a couple of really interesting things that helped me make sense of my mom's sudden change in behavior. Apparently, her stepdaughter is a total mini-her, and that's why she's so in love with that kid. My parents went to the same high school but didn't start dating until later in life, but my dad knew that my mom was kind of the it girl in high school and through college. So it was no surprise that she'd taken such a liking to her new stepdaughter, because that girl was a replica of what she used to be back then. Unlike me, who had always been a bit of a nerd. I'm not shocked that my mother was a mean girl in school, because she's still quite stunning and has the same aura about her. She can make just about anyone like her, but it was quite a huge surprise for me to learn that this might be one of the reasons why she suddenly liked her stepdaughter more than her biological daughter, me. It also probably didn't help that her stepdaughter's biological mother wasn't in the picture anymore, so she could fully step into the shoes of the mother she'd always wanted to be to the daughter she'd always wanted. I'm not saying it's exactly what happened, but there's a strong chance that my dad's theory might be correct. Either way, he's with me in my decision to cut her off and has blocked her himself as well, because he believes that her behavior was unacceptable. I don't really know what to think about any of this, and I'm actually hoping it's not true. Update 3. Hi, everyone. So it's been a while since I posted an update, but that's because I was busy thanking everyone. I recently got engaged, about a week ago. My boyfriend and I had planned to celebrate our 3rd anniversary privately at home, but he surprised me by throwing a huge party at his house, one that I actually wanted. I gifted him the game that I'd bought for him and he gave me the best gift I could have asked for, a ring on my finger. I'm thrilled about this and I genuinely didn't expect this, but he'd been planning for this for a while now. I'm really happy that I got to share that moment with all my loved ones, my friends, and my family. And to answer the million-dollar question that I know everyone's thinking about, no, my mother did not attend. My boyfriend, now fiancé, has asked her in spite of our ongoing tiff and she flat out refused to attend. She'd even gone to the extent of saying that I'm no daughter of hers. So fine then, I don't care either way because now I know where I stand and don't have to deal with her and her arrogant stepdaughter anymore. I have my friends and my family to look out for me, so I don't need her negative energy around me anymore. It hurt when he told me about it, but I'm not going to let her hurt me anymore. My dad's here for me. My soon-to-be husband is here for me. My friends are here for me. And that's all I need.